This is Ryan Waste from Municipal Waste and Bat, and you're watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 270 of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Ryan Waste from Municipal Waste, Bat, and probably a plethora of other bands I don't even know about. So, how are you doing today, Ryan?
Doing well, man.
And it's great to have you here. I also love your little setup with the vinyls and stuff in the back. That looks pretty awesome.
It's a big setup.
Yeah, like how many vinyls do you have? Holy shit.
Vinyl, I got about probably 2,000 maybe.
Holy shit. I only have like 400.
I mean, it's always growing. I mean, it's out there. It's out in the
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, you should see like my CD collection I have like back here, and I have some in the back. I have like almost 28 or 2,900 CDs. I've been collecting since I was like 13 and I'm 30 now. So,
Hey, yeah, I still got all my cassettes from when I was a kid too. So I
yeah.
just hold on to everything, man. It's
Yeah. I also have like some cassettes too, but the irony is I don't even have a tape player.
oh, you got to get one, man. It's
Yeah,
the
definitely. I need to find like a way to like get like a tape converter so you can like put it like on your computer because I have like some cassette only releases for some bands I want to put on my iTunes and stuff.
You can do it through a mixer. Like I can do it through my preamp mixer. That's you can kind of run it through. It's not as hard as you think.
Awesome. Anyway, so it's great to have you here. So, pretty much the format is I want to talk about your musical history and sort of do a speed run of your discography, but take me back to young Ryan Waste. So, kind of growing up, what were like the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to start playing guitar?
Well, I played bass first, but definitely Sabbath and Priest were my go-to as a kid. Me and my brother used to rent cassettes from the library and tape them and make our own mixtapes back then. This is like the mid to late '80s, and I mean, I was a metalhead as a young kid. I mean, nothing's changed. It's crazy, man. And I started turning my older brother onto bands as I got older and got deeper into it. He still hits me up. He's like, send me some new music, but it's always old. I'm always digging deeper in the past with heavy metal for sure, down to hard rock and like proto rock and stuff.
Nice. And I was like sort of like doing my research on Metal Archives. I believe one of your first bands was called Immortal Adventure. Like I'm digging deep. Like I don't think nobody ever talks about this.
Yeah, I mean, I started Immortal Avenger after Municipal Waste, but it was pretty, early in the early 2000s. That was like a heavy metal project I did. I think we did a release in 2003. But yeah, I mean, I that ended up turning into some of the guys went on to Vulture, which is another like band similar to that had three of the members went on to do Vulture too with me. But yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to do a heavy metal band, and it's been the toughest one to keep together because the vocals are very demanding. Getting someone who can actually sing. So with Bat, I can't sing high, but we'll still throw some heavy metal riffs in there. But it's gonna be dirty.
Yeah. And then kind of like I know I'm backtracking a little bit, but going back to 2001 is when Municipal Waste formed, just like you
I
and Tony.
started it in 2000. I mean, of course, we played our first show. It was the year 2000, turning over to 2001, but
Yeah.
our first release was in 2001. Yeah.
Yeah. But tell me about like forming the band with like you and Tony. Like, how did you meet Tony?
I met Tony going to shows, but I mean, I formed the band with a couple guys in my garage before that. Even it was a pretty gnarly punk house I lived in, and I did shows out back, and I just had this like bunker bricked in space that I put on house shows, and it was pretty much just a squat that I paid rent at. It was such a shithole. And that was like in '99 and in 2000, and I was just doing shows out back, and this band PC Per Roadblock used to practice out there, and I had their instruments set up, so I would just go out there and jam with the singer would play drums and we'd play like shitty Sepultura covers. My buddy Bobby would jump on drums, and it turned into me jamming with this guy Brendan, who me and him played in a band together, and he got behind the kit. And we just started writing like simple thrash metal shit. It's the first band I ever played guitar in, moving from bass. And I got my old one of my best friends, Andy Harris, to play on bass, and he was the original bass player who went up through Waste Them All and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long history, but yeah, Tony and I met at shows, and he was already doing bands and punk bands, and he moved out to the West Coast for a while. And when he came back, we were in need of a singer, and we just teamed up then, and it
Yeah.
became a real band.
Yeah. And then I know you played locally around like Richmond and Virginia and stuff. I know you had also that that self-titled EP in 2001. Eventually, you got signed to your, believe, your first label, which is 6 Weeks Records. So, how did they
We did a
find?
record on Amendment Records before that. We did a 7-inch self-titled on Amendment, which is like a Virginia label. And so there's some smaller stuff before 6 weeks actually.
Yeah. But then tell me about making the debut full-length album, Waste 'Em All. I love this album. I thought it was a very underrated debut album, especially in like the crossover kind of thrash metal
Yeah,
genre.
thanks.
So, what was
So
sort of
that was
like,
yeah.
yeah, so
We changed drummers for that, and that's when I think it really hit the ground running because we got Brandon on drums for
yeah.
that. And I think that's the standout part of that record is the drumming is incredible. And he was 17, 18 years old when we did that. I remember
Wow.
Brandon saying to me, like, he's like, "Yeah, go off in the studio." I was like, "Well, will you be able to do that again live?" Like a lot of those are just like first takes, no overdubs on guitar. We just made sure the drums were right.
Yeah.
And he did some wild shit on that record. So I think the drums are definitely the standout part of that. And Brandon's not with us anymore. So
Yeah. Rest
when
in
we do
peace.
we always dedicate if we do any of those songs to him.
Yeah, because I know like last year was also the 20th anniversary of this album. So, how do you feel about the album now, like like now 21 years later versus when you first put it out in 2003?
I mean, we just did a tour where we played a bunch of those songs, and I mean, they're intense. I mean, they're fast and they're short, but very demanding, especially on vocals too. I know it's like rapid fire vocals, and we have to like really psych ourselves out to play that part of the set. And they still hold up. I mean, it's cool that people are finally listening to them. I mean, there was diehards that were down with that stuff early on, but I think people are finally getting a chance to listen to it since we reissued it on Nuclear Blast.
Yeah. Yeah, and when Waste 'Em All first came out, did you like sort of playing like locally around, just play that's like outside of Virginia for the first time, or was it still just
I mean,
locally around Richmond?
we went on like DIY tours right after we joined. I mean, we started in 2001. We were already touring up and down in a van and playing house shows, and we were traveling before Waste Them All even came out, but it was on a small DIY like hardcore level. I mean, and we kept that kind of thing going through until we went to Europe for the first time, probably in 2004. So
Oh,
yeah, I mean, it was a hell of a time, man. I mean, we were just kids, just playing.
yeah. And then next up, Hazardous Mutation. I love this album because usually with the debut full-length album, you have your entire life to write, and there's a lot of hype with the first album. When it came to making Hazardous Mutation, did you feel pressure to follow up Waste 'Em All?
Yeah, I mean, I think the more pressure was that it was on a bigger label, and I think a lot of people were, people from the outside are skeptical, but if anything, it's the same band, even though we actually added Dave and Phil on that record. So same formula, a couple different members, we stepped it up, and
Yeah.
that's still one of my favorite records because
Yeah.
we had a lot to prove with, being on Earache with a new lineup, and we still play a ton of those songs
Yeah.
in the set.
And of course, you mentioned this is the first album with currently still in the band, Phil and
It's the
Dave's.
lineup now. Yeah, I mean, those guys,
Yeah,
came and stuck around, man.
yeah. How'd
They're
they
the
end up
best.
joining?
Well, I mean, Andy ended up having to leave to take care of some life stuff and get sober, and he's doing well now. And Dave, I mean, Brandon quit right before Europe too, so that was me and Tony signed to Earache, just the two of us at that point, and we didn't have a rhythm section. And we knew Phil from playing in town. He was a killer bass player, and Phil learned all the songs at like one practice. He knew everything. And Dave took a little convincing before that. I mean, he was pretty accomplished in his own right. He had moved down from Jersey to Richmond and was working at a t-shirt screen printing shop with Tony. And I think Tony just convinced him to come out with us and play some shows. He agreed to do the record, and then he did a weekend with us, and he was like, "I'm in." Pretty
Yeah,
simple.
just like that.
And that was like the only crossover where it was Andy with Dave. I think we did one weekend of shows, and then Phil joined shortly after that.
Yeah. And I know next year will be the 20-year anniversary of this album. Is there a chance you'll do like a celebration of it, maybe play it in full, kind of like similar to how you did with Waste 'Em All?
Yeah, we actually did it in LA. We did a maybe a 15 year of that one. I can't remember. Yeah, I think we did a 15 year. So yeah, we know all those songs. We still got to do it for Art of Party and then a couple other things we've never done straight through. We actually already did Hazardous straight through. Probably because
Yeah.
we just dig those songs so much.
Yeah, it's still a banger of an album.
Thanks.
And then we get to probably my favorite Municipal Waste album, The Art of Partying. I
Go
love
figure.
this album. So what was it like going from this to this?
Well, we toured a lot more, and we were spending a lot more time overseas. We were doing a lot of European stuff, and I mean, we never stopped at that point. I mean, we ended up going out of town and recording that in Hadley, Massachusetts, with this producer named Zeus, who was an old thrasher, just like one of us, and really wanted to record the band. So we went up and did kind of like a camp away recording session for Art of Party, and it was a really special time. Yeah, I mean, those songs just came together. I mean, just like anything, we didn't know that that was going to be the one everyone, jumped on board with. But I think just being a band about 7, 8 years at that point, I think people were catching on to what we were putting down.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd pretty much consider you guys as almost like master of puppets in a way.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then next up, I pretty much consider this like an underrated album, Massive Aggressive. I like this album. I don't think really nobody ever really talks about this album.
Yeah, I mean, it was the follow up to a record that everyone really liked, and we were leaving Earache, and I think we were getting kind of sick of the whole party image that the label kept pushing us to do, kind of weird antics and stuff. So we wanted to do something a little more straightforward. And I mean, yeah, I still like a lot of the songs on that. I mean, we don't do anything we that we wouldn't, put on a record. So I mean, yeah, sure, we play some jams off that one still.
Yeah. And then next up, the Fatal Feast. I love this album. It was his first album on your current label, Nuclear Blast Records. So how is it like working with them, and what's the relationship with you all
I would
now?
say a world of difference. It was much more give and take, like as a friendship with Nuclear Blast. That's why we're still with them, and now Bat signed with them too. So I mean, I liked, obviously, having all my stuff under one umbrella is great, and yeah, we stuck with Blast. I mean, I can't say anything bad about them. I mean, they're like they're a big label, but they seem like they have like the right rooted morals with heavy music.
Yeah. And
Is
kind
that
of break
political an answer now?
Yeah, and it's good, man. So, kind of breaking away a little bit from Municipal Waste, I know in 2013 you did Vulture, which was on the Edge album in 2013. So, tell me
Well, yeah.
about like
So
that.
it's funny. I did an interview yesterday. They skipped right to 2013, probably because that's the only one that's streaming. So me and Nick started Vulture in 2009. Did a record in 2010, 2011, called Shocking Its Prey, which is not really streaming online. Which I'm gonna probably change that so people can get it, because that's some of my favorite stuff I've ever done. So yeah, so we started that a little before 2013. We had a singer named Metal Hubbard, and we changed singers to this guy Jack Bauer for On the Edge, but also started Bat around 2013 too,
Yeah,
which is what I'm sitting here promoting, because that's we got a new record coming out.
yeah, which we'll get there. But talk me about like forming Bat that same year in 2013. It's like
So
you
Bat
and
was
Nick.
yeah,
Yeah,
so it didn't really, nothing really happened until me and Nick decided to actually start writing for that. But the older idea was I was going to get with Felix Griffin, who ultimately became the drummer of Bat. Felix, people know from DRI, killer Texas drummer. Me and him had been talking about doing a project for like 3, 4 years before that. Just never did anything, to the point where me and Nick were like, Vulture was winding down around 2013, and just hanging out and wanting to do this kind of straightforward project we'd always had in the back of our back pockets. And we just threw some riffs at Felix. He came to Richmond, and we just slapped it straight down on tape. I mean, it was pretty straightforward
yeah,
beginning that band.
yeah. And you've been with like a lot of bands from Municipal Waste to Vulture to now Bat. So, how different of a mind frame is it depending on the project? Do you always approach like the different projects with like I have to be in this certain headspace, or are you allowed to like bring
It's
like
all the
free
same.
reign? Yeah.
It's all the same for me. I mean, you don't even think about it. I mean, we all get in a room and write music together. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, with heavy metal stuff, of course, you're going to bring a different approach in, and I think Bat gets to do the elements of both, like speed metal and hardcore and heavy metal all mixed in there. So, I mean, yeah, it's really just like at this point, what kind of songs do we want to write? And me and Nick get in a room, and now with Chris Marshall and Richmond on drums for Bat, it's even easier. We're practicing more consistently, and writing this new record Under the Crooked Claw just came together so easily, and it took forever to come out, but writing it was a hell of a good time.
Yeah. And I would like to talk about like the first album, Wings of Chains. I was
Sure.
actually was listening to it in preparation for this interview. I
Cool.
thought that was a really great debut. So what was sort of like the thought process going into making the debut Bat album?
Well, we had done a demo, and that was called Primitive Age before that. And you'll notice all the same songs are on the debut album, probably because they needed to marinate. We had just basically showed them to Felix, laid them down, recorded them. That was the demo without ever playing live or out, really practicing the songs beyond that. Maybe just two practices and recorded the demo. So the songs were seasoned for Wings and Chains. We had got on the road. We toured, in 2014. That record came out till 2016. So we'd actually played some of these songs live, and it was a great time. I mean, it was the first time I'm singing full on in a band, and recorded all the vocals in this room right here by myself in my media room, and it was just like, yes, it was a whole new awakening, and I'm very happy with that record.
Yeah. And then kind of going back to Municipal Waste 2017, you did Slime and Punishment. I love this album. And this was actually the album, the first time I ever saw you guys was on the album cycle. You did that Warp Tour that year. And that was the first time ever seeing you all. And I think I've seen almost every Atlanta show you've done since then.
Oh, right on. Yeah, so that Nick joined Municipal Waste the year before that, and we did. So now, me and Nick are in everything we do. He's
Yeah.
my best friend. So
Yeah. So how
it
did you
was
and Nick meet?
we met in Richmond. He moved up here from Florida in 2004. I think he first visited Richmond, and just mutual friends, a bunch of punks and metalheads hanging out and backyard parties as we did. And yeah, my friend introduced us, and she's like, "You're gonna love this guy. He rips on guitar." And I was like, "Sure enough, just a killer dude on top of that." And we actually, I think I snuck him into an Immortal Avenger show in 2004, and he was underage. Nick's like about 6 years younger than me. I was like, "Come on in, man. I can get you in the back door." He always reminds me of that. So
Oh,
I've known Nick
wow.
for a while, and it took until like 2009 starting Vulture for us to start playing together, because I really enjoy playing bass, and he's a far better guitar player than me. So I felt like that was always a cool connection, me on bass and him on guitar. So Vultures like that, Bats like that. But with Waste, I always thought it'd be cool to have lead guitar. I'm not a lead guitar player. I've never said I was, and
Just a
that
riff dude.
motherfucker can play it. Yeah, I feel like a bass player playing guitar, and I always say that. And it's just what it is.
Yeah, and I
But
remember
Nick,
there was like one interview I heard like somebody described like bass players as just frustrated guitarists.
I don't look at it like that's an immature ass idea right there. I
Yeah.
think bass is just as important. And I started playing bass early. I feel even more confident playing bass, and it's the foundation of the music. So whoever said that's can f off.
Yeah. Yeah, but I thought Slime and Punishment was good, especially now having two guitars. I think if that sounds a lot more fuller and a lot heavier.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to beef up the production. It's been all over the place with Waste Records, and finally learning how to add the low end that was necessary. And yeah, I mean, Bill Mator, who was a classic producer, did that one. We recorded ourselves and sent it to him to mix. So yeah, now we're with Arthur Risk now. I mean, the records we're doing now sound, I think, better than ever. He did Under the Crooked Claw and Electrified Brain. So Arthur in Philly's the man.
Yeah. And
The
then
Risk.
talking about that Bad EP from 2019, Ecstasy.
Ecstasy. Yeah.
See, I thought that was a little great EP. I thought it was just like you all just like simple to the point. It's only like 13 minutes and it's just
Yeah,
great
that's an
songs
EP.
like the title track, Ice, Ritual Fool, just some sick ass songs. So
Thanks,
what
man.
was that? Was
Sounds
that
like you like everything. This is great, man.
yeah,
I can't wait for the one that you're like, I didn't like this one. So that's cool.
yeah.
Well, we
Hey,
went back to Texas and recorded that with Felix, and that was the last thing we did with Felix. So, as the long distance band goes, it was really difficult to rehearse and play shows for that matter. So we went to Texas that time to record with him.
yeah. And then that
And
same
it
yeah, you're
snowed
saying.
during the recording of Ice in Texas, which is wild.
Yeah. Yeah, did that sort of like maybe like affect like the sound, like give it sort of like a colder kind of sound to it? No pun intended.
Icy.
Yeah. Yeah. But then also that same year you also did another EP from which is the Municipal Waste Last Rager EP that same year. So like man, how that had to be hard like because that same year trying to get like a balance with everything.
Yeah, we basically recorded that, I think, with Phil ourselves, and then had our friend Rob Caldwell mix that one. And It was just a short EP. I mean, that's two EPs. It's like it's doable. I mean, I do way much more output now. I mean, it's wild what you can get done. But yeah, those
Yeah.
came just because they came out the same year. I don't think they were recorded at the same time. Just
Yeah.
depending on the label.
Yeah. And then tell me about the last album from Municipal Waste, Electrified Brain. That was definitely one of my favorite albums from 2022. I noticed there was like a long gap between Slime and Punishment and Electrified Brain,
Well,
about
do you
like five
remember what
years.
happened? If you look at the 2 years, do you remember what happened between that? Do you really
Yeah,
want
that
to get into that?
certain virus that I refuse to
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, well, we were working on a new record, and we actually had to push it back, the release a whole year. I think we could have released that in 2021, but we didn't know what was going to go down with touring and everything. And both Electrified Brain and Under the Crooked Claw were like pandemic records. We had time to write and record, and the world stopping actually really helped the production of both of those, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, did that like the whole like pandemic sort of like influence like the sound of it? Because I know a lot of people, musicians say like that time was when like apparently like the music industry was all fucked up and everything.
I think just having the time to work on it and being frustrated, and both bands play aggressive music, so of course it affected that. I think Under the Crooked Claw even more because we recorded that and wrote that a little later, so we didn't know what was going to happen. Everything shut down. I mean, everyone went through it, so nobody's special, but at least we had the time to write.
Yeah, and with of course Under the Crooked Claw, which we're now finally talk about. I've only heard like the two songs, right, for Exorcism and
Did they
Street.
not send you the record? I tried to put you in touch with our publicist to get you the record. You haven't
Yeah,
heard it?
yeah. I need to hit her up. Hey, Kristen, hit me up. But I've
Well, you
only
gotta
heard
you gotta you gotta do a little work for it because that's what we're here for, man.
hell yeah. But
You
I
gotta
love
fill
the
out an application or some shit.
I will definitely get onto that. But those two songs are absolutely kick-ass. So what was sort of like the writing and recording process like for Under the Crooked Claw?
Three guys in a room banging out the songs. Just the world was shut down, like I said. And man, if that didn't get us through it, I mean, there's nothing else to do but write music. And me, Nick, and Chris just had a hell of a time. The shit was just coming to us pretty easily. And the first time we had drums in the room, really, for Bat, because before it would be me and Nick just writing riffs, showing Felix on the fly, and then recording. And this one was written, with drums in the room, so you could probably tell by the transitions. It's a lot more. The flow is good, and I think it's the best stuff we've done. I don't want to. I'd rather you hear it and you tell me that, but you haven't got it yet. At least you got the two songs. Friday, the
Yeah,
whole thing comes out. So
yeah.
depending when this record or when this interview drops,
Yeah, they'll be
May
up like
17th, you'll
right
hear
immediately
everything.
after I hang up the call. But with the Under the Crooked Claw musically, did you want to continue in the same vein as Wings of Chains, or did you want to try something new or different that Bat hasn't done before?
Um, a little bit of both. We always want to step it up. I think you should step up the next thing you do and try harder every time. So, I mean, I think the formula's there. There's a little more heavy metal and rock and roll thrown in there, and I think that's we want it to sound like Bat. We don't want to sound like anyone else. So, I'm completely proud of this and confident with this record. So, I wish you heard it already.
Yeah. And of course, with Bat being like the front man, like how different of it is being like a front man, like singing like full on lead vocals versus like with other projects like singing like backup vocals.
Well, you lose your voice a lot quicker. You gotta just get your rest and drink water. But we just did South America where we basically flew every night and didn't sleep for 2 days. So I mean, you got to roll with the punches too. It's a lot on your plate when you're singing. So anyone that's a singer, I got total respect if you can keep your voice together because it ain't easy, especially this kind of music.
Yeah. And of course, talking about like the lyrical content, like do you have to put yourself in like a certain mind frame in order to come up with lyrics, or does the lyrics just come like naturally and organically for you?
Pretty organic. Like I've said in other interviews, like I find it pretty easy to write lyrics, especially if I'm inspired and psyched on the song. I usually go home and write them the night we come up with them. And
Nice.
sometimes I'll have ideas ahead of time and shit written, jotted down, song titles and stuff, concepts, and just kind of wait for the right song to drop them in on. So yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. For me, it's not a chore writing lyrics. It's fun. It's therapeutic.
Yeah. And of course, like you're playing bass in the band. So how different of a mindset is it to like playing bass versus playing guitar?
Well, I mean, when you're singing and playing any instrument, it's important to, when the verse comes in, to simplify what you're playing so you can actually pull it off live. So I keep all that in mind and try to fill in, anything intricate around vocals, when I'm not singing. So yeah, I mean, you just got to think about that kind of thing, and less is more. I think with any music, people that play overcomplicated shit, it's not memorable.
Yeah.
So I mean, sometimes just riding out a and root note is effective. That's rock and roll.
Yeah, and I always like asking like musicians that do both. So like when it comes to like the creating of the songs, do you ever write the songs like figuring out like, okay, where am I singing at, like where I'm at per fret, like
Yeah,
do
I
do do.
always think about that. Yeah, that's definitely something to be aware of. Like, that's basically what I was just saying.
Yeah, just basically like how you could what you could do on the album is what you can do live.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes you just throw yourself in there, and something you think is too hard to sing over, you can end up doing it as long as you just practice enough. And
Yeah.
playing live is the best practice you can do.
Yeah, and of course, like playing bass, and I know you've heard, I know there's always the bass player jokes and the memes that are out there, but I feel like
I
you,
don't read that stupid shit.
yeah, but I love how you don't gravitate towards flashy bass playing, especially. But I feel like you find ways to link what Nick is doing with the melody and what Chris is doing with the rhythm, but in a way that's creative. So, what is like your approach to like slapping a bass?
That's a funny way to put it. I I I did a lot of crazier shit when I was younger. Like, even if you go back to Immortal Avenger, I would be at real high up on the neck and doing complicated runs. But it's like the older you get, you realize, like I just said before, less is more, and sitting in the pocket, riding the root notes is very effective. Lead bass is too much sometimes. But if you could find these little windows where you do a little fill if the drums are doing something, or if I'm not singing, or if Nick's not doing something, I always find ways to fill in those gaps. So, when you hear the rest of the record, you'll hear some stuff like that, but nothing over the top. And I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah, and of course of like playing live, like how different of a mind frame is it to like playing live versus like recording? Is there any differences or similarities between the two?
I'll always add some stuff in live just to entertain myself, try some stuff out, and I mean, we play just like we do at practice in the studio. We all in the same room when we record, and we're a very straightforward band. There's no like studio trickery. Like, the way that recording has become is insane. The way it's like on a grid and in computers, and it just seems like nerdy as fuck to me.
Yeah. And I noticed you also play with like a bunch of different bands. Like I've seen Municipal Waste now like probably like 6 times. Know the first time I saw you was on Warp Tour, which is like different bands from like Carnifex and After the Burial, Acacia Strain, and Fit for a King, which is like
I
deathcore
tried to
metalcore.
stay away from all that.
Yeah, but
Not
then
those bands in particular, but it was just hot, man. I don't even want to think about that fucking
yeah,
tour.
but then I know you also did do some like tours with like Obituary, which are just straight up death the
Yeah, you
metal
can't. Okay,
and
first of all, you
Carcass.
can't group Warp Tour into us choosing to play with any bands. Like, that's a different thing. But yeah, but
Yeah.
we always play with a variety of stuff.
Yeah.
Both bands,
Yeah,
from
but
hardcore metal and punk rock or rock and roll.
yeah, but do you ever notice like a different like the different like crowds that you play with depending on the different tours that you're on?
I mean, that's the whole point, to play with different stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a fan of a lot of different bands. So I mean, we're not going to play with a band that just sounds like Municipal Waste. I mean, that would get old. Tours that where it's the same genre the whole time. I mean, you'll just get a headache.
Yeah.
Any kind of music.
Yeah, but I feel like you have like a sound that could appeal to like any crowd. It's like I don't think you could just play for like a Municipal Waste crowd. I feel like you could play for like the hardcore crowd, thrash metal crowd, death metal crowd. So I feel like it like Municipal Waste, Bat and Vulture and any other projects that you're involved with have like a sound that can appeal to everybody.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks, man.
Anytime, anytime. And talking about, I also want to talk about like your gear setup because I'm always curious, like what kind of like guitars or basses that you use and strings and
Yeah,
pedals and
for
amps and stuff.
yeah. Well, for bass, I have these 1970s guilds that I'm a lefty, which is hard to find old instruments as it is. I have three guild originals, that 77 is the B301. That was the first one I got. And then I got two 1979s B302s. So if you want to look those up, I mean, they're beautiful instruments. Those are my prized possessions, the guilds. I've had the 301 since I was 18. And you know, for Municipal Waste, I have my own custom guitar that we do with RIP Customs. My buddy Rob Gray, who also plays in Toxic Holocaust, has made the last three guitar, actually the last two guitars, but we actually are trying to make them available, readily available that people can buy. So my signature model that's in the shape of the M and the the W upside down, flying M, MWX is what I call it. So I'm a lefty, man. So I don't, it was hard finding guitars, especially like a flying V like I wanted. So we made my own
Nice. And
for
so,
bass, Sun amps, and Marshalls for guitar. I mean, I don't use a lot of fucking pedals. I use a tube screamer and a tuner for both.
nice. And so, kind of like in the end to sort of wrap things up, what's next for Bat or Municipal Waste or any of your other bands? I know we got the new Bat album coming out on Friday, and I know you got another tour
Yeah.
coming up with Bat.
So
So
this
it was
week,
just
yeah, I'll tell you real quick. This week, Waste is going out and playing Milwaukee Metal Fest. So maybe this interview comes out right around then. That's this Saturday, the 18th. Yeah, the Bat record comes out the 17th. The day before, I'll be driving to Milwaukee, trying not to look at my phone because the record's coming out. And we got a video coming out that day for Revenge of the Wolf for Bat that comes out on the 17th. Yeah, then the Waste plays Milwaukee Metal Fest. We play Pittsburgh the next day. And then about 8 days later, Bat does a U.S. tour with Necrot and Street Tombs, and that's going to be we'll play through Atlanta, I think. So come check it out. That's at the end of June,
definitely.
Atlanta
So
gig, and then I go to Australia directly after that with Waste. So I mean, we're running out of time, man.
nice, man. So thank you, Ryan, for this
Yeah,
conversation. It's great to have you on today. Is just any
I
final
appreciate
words
it.
you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close us out?
Go buy Under the Crooked Claw and come to the gig.
Awesome. So everybody, Ryan Waste from Municipal Waste and Bat. See you next time.